In this video, I'm going to show you how to design an email in Canva with all the tips and tricks using images and native text. We're then going to export that out of Canva and import it into your email platform. I'm going to be using Klaviyo for this example, but you can use any email platform that has a drag and drop editor. You're here to learn, so let's get straight into this.
For today's example, I'm going to show you inside my email design toolkit. At a top level view, you get 8 email templates, and every email template, there are 2 examples. Now, it does look a little bit crazy at this point, but I am going to walk you through exactly how I designed this particular email here with the template above. The reason why I don't just deliver designed email templates is because there is a structure behind the way that you should be designing your emails, and understanding when to put native elements like native text and native CTAs, which are pulled in your email platform, versus using images. Otherwise, you're just going to be using 100% image-based emails. And for most small business owners, 100% image-based emails are not a great way to begin. Before you can start any type of email design, you first need to understand your own branding and how you're going to bring that over into email. In my email design toolkit, I also give you access to email brand guidelines. And within the toolkit, there's a mini course in there that walks you through every single element, choosing background colors, understanding text size, text color, line height, everything down to your CTA buttons, which are your call to actions. Do they have rounded corners? What color are they? Do you have a main CTA, alternative CTAs? Understanding how to design your header and your footer, which we're not going to be doing in this video today. Once you understand what your brand guidelines are, it's very easy for you to bring that over into email. For this design, this is a complete mock-up business. So I'm going to be using the imagery within Canva itself. The first thing that I like to do when I'm looking at a template like this is changing out all of the fonts and the CTAs to be on brand. So I changed my main heading, which is also going to be uppercase. My body copy is going to change as well. My main CTA will change to the brand color, which is a brown color. And the font will also be updated. It's uppercase and it's not bold. What I love about Canva is that we can copy that design and then also update the other CTAs. Now, my top and bottom CTAs are going to be what I would call your primary or your main CTAs, and the ones in the center of this design are going to be secondary CTAs. So they're not going to stand out as much as the first ones. For these particular CTAs, the background color is going to be transparent. The border is brown, as well as the text. It's not bold and it's uppercase. Now, to design this email, obviously we need to understand what we're about to talk about. So we can't go into an email design blinded. For this example, we're talking about a new collection that is going to be released. This template can be used in so many different ways. It could be a promotion for a particular product or a collection itself. It doesn't need to be the announcement of a new collection. But please have an understanding of what you want your email to be before you start designing it. We're going to be designing from the top of the email and then working our way down. Firstly, I'm going to get rid of the header information because I'm not going to focus on this, but you want your headers to be exactly the same for every single email. We're going to move straight into the hero image, and the red tags here identify what every section of this email is about. This is a hero with strong imagery. Now, besides the imagery having to be strong, we also need a very strong message. And this message is going to outline what this email is about and entice people to want to read further. For the image itself, there are grayed out squares where I recommend for the imagery to go and how long it should be. But of course, it can be shorter or longer depending on what the actual imagery is. For now, I'm going to delete this rectangle out because I know that's where I want to put my image. When you're designing, you need to understand that not everything is going to be perfect, and sometimes testing out different imagery and how it's going to work with your heading is the best bet. For example, I'm going to bring this image in first, and at the same time I also want to focus on bringing in this heading as well, because as important as the image is, so is the copy that's going at the top of my email. There are 2 parts to my heading. First is the collection name, which is neutral, and second is a subheading which says Collection Series 03. Now you can see when I've put the image there that things are not really very clear. Even if I change this text to black, it wouldn't be showcasing this text. So straight away, you want to start looking at how we can find some negative space in order to have a clear heading and a beautiful image that are not fighting for attention and looking messy. So an example could be that I could look for negative space above or below. I could also try and move the image to the side and bring this over to the side as well. We don't want the text to go too small. It needs to be a certain size, especially if it's a heading 1. So that's already telling me I'm not sure that this image is going to work because there's not enough negative space for me to be able to use that. So by simply playing around with how we think this is going to work is going to indicate whether you should be using this image or not. And you might go through a series of different images, different layouts, changing the text size, moving things around that you can do. And I suggest that you spend quite a bit of time figuring this out. The final image that I came up with was this particular design here. Reason being is because it had quite a bit of negative space above and below, and the models were quite centered. When I saw this image, I had the idea of bringing the girl's arms to be in front of the text. And this is a little trick that I absolutely love, and it's a great way to elevate your designs. Click on the image, copy it, and then paste it directly over the top. If you have the Pro version of Canva, which I recommend for you to have, you use your BG remover, which is your background remover. Now we have 3 different layers. We have the original image behind, we have the text layer, and then we have the image again that has the background removed. A simple edit, but it makes so much difference. I'm very happy with that placement, so I'm going to move on to the next section. This is a product overview and a very quick overview. This particular icon that says ESP is Email Service Provider. So your email platform that you're going to be sending your emails from. This is indicating that this area is what's called native, meaning that I'm going to design it in here, but I'm going to redesign this section inside the email marketing platform so that the email is not 100% images. I can go ahead and delete that for now. What I recommend with any area where you have text is to keep the areas short and not overload it with too many paragraphs. Anywhere between 3 to 4 lines maximum, a great starting point and easy for readers to scan. I'm going to update the CTA. I'm also going to extend out this a little bit further and then center it. Now I could leave this section as it is and use a white background and continue the white background all the way down the email. But I want to show you something a little bit different, which is again going to elevate your designs. And this is using a background color and then fading it into the image above. When you're designing with native elements, I suggest that you keep a plain color behind the native elements. So the native elements are the text as well as the CTA. And this is so that we can rebuild it in your email platform. Let me show you what I mean. I've just pulled in a rectangle here by clicking R on my keyboard. I'm going to extend it out and put it over the area. Pull that to the back. Now I need this rectangle to fade beautifully into the image above. And this is how you're going to do it. First, I'm going to choose a color on the image on the lower part of the image. I click my color picker and I choose that color. Now we need a second rectangle. So we're going to copy the one that we already have. This time we're going to pull it up onto the image. We're going to go into our colors and we're going to make this rectangle gradient. The first color being the color of the rectangle below. The second color, I suggest you change it over to white and then you bring the transparency all the way down. From here, we need the color to be along one end at the top and then gradient at the bottom at the opposite end. Now, this is the wrong way around. All I'm going to do is simply change that around because I need the block color to be at the bottom of the rectangle and the transparency, the gradient, to come up to where the models are. Sometimes you'll see lines like this in between the 2 blocks. Simply grab one, and for this instance, I'm going to hit down on my keyboard. And the last step of this is bringing the models back to the front. So by clicking on that top image that has the background removed, I'm going to bring that image to the front. So now we've created this beautiful flow from the image into a plain background directly into the copy and the CTA button. From here, you can start adjusting and moving things up if you feel like they need to be closer. But the most important thing is to keep that text on the block that is the one color. We don't want it to be higher up so that it's on the gradient. If you want to bring some of that gradient down, you can also pull down that block as well, and it will still have a beautiful flow about it. I'm also going to change this text color over to the branded color. And I'm going to bold an important part of this section. So again, it's just easier for my subscribers to scan and flow through and get that information in as quickly as possible. Now we're moving into the middle part of the email. When we're moving from one section to another, I suggest that you leave quite a bit of breathing space. We call this white space, which is the area from the bottom of a section moving into another section. If I was to leave this square really close to the CTA button, it can look cramped and unfinished. And this white space, this breathing space, really helps the readers scan and flow through and understand each section by section. Because we put together the hero image as well as the text section below, this all became one section. The next section is your product features and your benefits. The gray area is indicating that this whole section here is going to be an image. I'm going to be putting text, CTA buttons, and an image. So for the design flow, I'm going to delete those rectangles and I'm going to bring in the imagery. When you're starting a new section, you match the white space that you have in the above section. So in this instance, I will grab all of that and then just pull that down so that we have a colorful rectangle that has space here, as well as a nice white section that is matching that same space and then moving into the next part of the copy. When I'm creating a section that is going to be duplicated, I make sure that I get the first design right before moving on and updating the next one. So I'm going to highlight two product features. First is breathable, the second is going to be flexible. And when I'm looking at a smaller section like this, I want to stay anywhere between 2 to 3 lines maximum. You need to remember everything is about scannability for your reader. I could leave this section exactly as is, but because I know this is going to be one whole image, I know I can do a little bit of designing to the actual text itself. So I'm going to bring in another rectangle. I'm going to change the color to the color above so that we get some consistency in those colors as well. And I'm going to bring this over the heading text to stand out. Trying to create something different, just a little change like that can really make the text pop. Once I'm happy with that design, I'm going to delete the section below and I'm going to copy and duplicate that and place it directly below. From here, I just quickly changed out the copy and there's a few changes that I need to make. So first, we're going to bring in this rectangle so that it matches the design above. Looking at the copy here, I think we can cut this down. And this happens a lot when we're designing an email. We think we've written the copy, but for some reason, it's just not working with the design. So when I'm reading this over, adapts to your body's natural shape, I'm not too sure that the word ensuring ultimate comfort and support. So we could even get rid of the word ensuring, make that a full stop. So we're making 2 statements. So it says adapts to your body's natural shape, ultimate comfort and support. That has then brought us down to 3 lines. Then I don't need to change any placement of the elements here. And they have a nice flow about them because they're replicating each other. Lastly, I just need to change out the image. When we're looking at imagery like this, I always like to give some dimension. So if the first image was a close-up shot, what I'm going to do is make this second image a longer shot of the body. This is a great way to pull attention and get some dimension in your design. Now moving on to the next section, which is going to be BTS, meaning behind the scenes, or a testimonial. So I'm giving you 2 recommendations of what you could put here. This section here is also going to be directly typed into your ESP. I've got my text here and I could simply leave it as is. It definitely has a nice flow about it, but you can see that when I get closer to that testimonial, that it just looks like a big chunky piece of text. So how can we make this stand out and seem even more important to our readers? By simply adding some color behind some text is a great way to make something pop. First, I'm just going to place another rectangle, change it to the brand color, which is the brown, update the text so that it is popping out of that color, and the best color for this would be white. I can also choose to leave the color all the way to the sides, or I could even just bring it in a little bit just to offer some padding and a nice flow from top to bottom. With this text section, you can see that I also have some padding from the previous section. I'm continuing with that white space all the way down the email. Moving on to the last section, which is a product image collage. There's 3 grade sections behind the images themselves, and this is to give you an indication of how I would break up these images. I wouldn't export it as one big image because the smaller the images are in your emails, the quicker they will load. And this will make sense when we go to export every single section in this email. But for now, I'm going to delete out all of those rectangles and I'm going to replace this with imagery. When I'm placing my images in a collage like this, I want to see imagery that is closer and further away so that it pulls more intrigue and excitement to look at. To finish off the email, we are going to finish with the last call to action, and it's going to be a native CTA. Now, my rule of thumb is that you should always be able to see a CTA button. As we scroll down this email now, we obviously have our first CTA button and we go into a secondary area. Then we fall into an area where there's really no CTA. As we start scrolling down, it's important to finish with a CTA because people are lazy and they don't want to scroll all the way up to the top. Also, as much as your images are going to click through to the product collection, it's important to assume that people don't know that these images are clickable. So by simply adding a CTA button at the bottom is just relieving all of these problems and giving them a place to click. And I'm gonna get straight to the point and say shop now instead of experience this collection or see the collection, just to give them a really actionable step to take at the bottom of the email. And that's it. That is your whole email designed in Canva. Now I'm going to show you how to export all of the images and upload it into an email service platform. And the platform that I'm going to be using today is called Klaviyo, but you can use this in any email platform that has a drag and drop editor, which about 99% of them have these days. When we're exporting our email from Canva, I don't want you to export this whole page out as an image. The quality of that when we pull it into an email platform is going to look quite grainy, and we want the highest quality as possible. This particular design here is what I like to call a mock-up. You need to mock up your design in something like Canva or Figma in order to know what you're working with and in order to know what the design is going to look like from top to bottom and how you're going to recreate this in your email platform. Before we can start exporting the images, first we need to identify what is actually going to be images. As we just discussed previously, certain sections here are going to be native elements. So I know that this hero section here is going to be one big image. This second section here where we had that rectangle is not going to be an image and something that we recreate in the email platform. These sections here are going to be images and we're going to break them up into one singular image and then a secondary image here. We're not going to export it as one big image. Also because we have different CTAs here as well. If I wanted to have different links on either of these, I would need to have different images. Plus, we don't want our images to be too big because of the load time. This section here is going to be native, so we're not going to export this. And then our last section here is collage, is obviously images, but we're going to break this up into 3 whole images. Our last section is a CTA button, which is going to be native. Now that we understand what is going to be images and what's not, we need to export these out. Now there's 2 ways to do this. At this point of recording, Canva haven't brought out a function to just select an area of your canvas and just export it out. But there is a way around that, and I'm going to show you that as option 1. And I'm also going to show you option 2 because if option 1 doesn't work, then we always need to go back to using option 2. To export this whole section out directly from this particular page, it all needs to be sitting on one big rectangle, or you could call that a canvas, so that we can actually export that out. So what I like to do is type R on my keyboard. It brings up a rectangle. I'm going to pull that rectangle all the way across and then all the way down to what I actually want to export out as an image. From here, I recommend you just change it to white. The size of this image is always going to be 900 across because that is the width of this email template. And that's the size that I suggest for you to have all of your images if they're going from one side of the screen to another. So this is telling me that this design is 1258.3, and that's totally fine. And now I'm going to send that to the back. Now I need to make sure that all of my imagery and all of my text elements are going to be sitting within that rectangle. The biggest mistake with this is if this text element, for example, was pulled out all the way past the page itself, it will get cut off. So we need to bring everything in, making sure that it's all sitting within that rectangle. From here, you can then select that whole area, right click and then download the section. Change it to PNG or to JPEG, and then you can download. Now I can already see that this is not going to work. As you can see here with this image, see how it's got the white area on the side? And that isn't anything to do with what you've done wrong. This is just the way that Canva works, and sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes the elements, when they're touching the sides, it doesn't like it. And so this is where we come to option 2. What I like to do is still pop a rectangle over the top of the area that I need the image, because what I want to do is understand what the height of that image is. Now we need to create a new Canva document with these measurements. To keep things easy, I'm going to change this to 1260. I'm going to round up. So the width is always going to be 900 and the height is 1260. Create the new design. From here, go back to your design, delete the rectangle, grab everything that was supposed to be in that rectangle over to your new design, click on it and paste. Now from here, we're going to adjust everything. Make sure that obviously we have no white sections on the side there. So I'm going to extend that image out. I grabbed both of the images then to do that, making sure that I'm happy with the way everything is. It's okay if things are hanging over the edge in this instance for this particular image, because it's only going to export out what is on this particular page. I'll name it our hero. Then I'm going to download and export out as a PNG. Now I'm going to follow the exact same steps for the next area. And because this next section is all very tight, nothing is falling over the sides of the page, this will be a time where that option 1 is going to work. So I'm going to create a rectangle. I can also use the positions to pull it out to be 900 wide, because it's exactly what we want. Then just adjusting the height depending on how we want that to work. I'm going to change it to white because that is what the background color is and it's going to show on the email. Make sure that I'm happy with the size from top to bottom. Obviously left to right is 900 wide. Now because everything is going to be within that rectangle, I'm going to grab it all, right click, download section. You can see in the size here that it's 900 by 506, which is fantastic. It's exactly what that rectangle is. PNG and download. Now I'm going to copy that rectangle and I'm going to put it over the next section. Make sure that it is centered and I'm going to send it to the back. Same thing, I'm going to grab that section and download. Moving on to the collage at the bottom. As discussed from the beginning, this is going to be 3 separate images. So I'm going to follow that same process, grabbing the rectangle, making it 900 wide, changing it to white, send it to the back. Now pull it down. And I'm going to pull this all the way just before we get to the next images. Then for the next section, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm just going to copy the rectangle that's already behind. It's going to start directly where those images start, and I'm going to pull this one down just to the next image again. Pull that to the back. Now we have one rectangle above that, one rectangle in the middle, and then we're going to follow the same steps for the last image. Send it to the back. Pull it down. You can either end this at the bottom of the image or you could extend it a little further. That's completely up to you. Now we have 3 sections with a rectangle behind each, and we're going to grab every section and do the same thing, downloading as a PNG. Now we've exported all the images out of our Canva document. We're going to move over to our email platform, and I'm going to show you how to import this in and also start designing all of your native areas. This is what a drag and drop editor will look like inside an email platform. They all look very similar. The blocks might be on the left of the page or the right of the page, but they all work exactly the same. In Klaviyo itself, we have 2 different views. We have our desktop as well as our mobile, which are as important as each other. We're going to start on desktop, and I'm going to show you how I fix things for mobile to make sure that we have a beautiful flow, because mobile is even more important than desktop is, but the template that we designed on is designed for mobile first design anyway. Before I start any design within a template itself, I need to make sure that the foundations of this email are set up. In Klaviyo, there is a Styles tab. This is where you can set your background color, your margins, what text you're going to be using within the email, what currency you're using. We can set different text sizes for desktop versus mobile, which is at the bottom. And the most important part is honestly going to be the font and the fonts that you're choosing. Now, it's important to understand that not every email client is going to show your branded font. So it's always good to have what's called a fallback font for anything that's going to be native. So this is the text that's going to be typed into your email platform. So I suggest that you choose a font that is very similar to your branded font. You can definitely use your branded font, but you just need to understand that there's always going to be a fallback font. Just to recap, I'm talking about this text here, which is going to be typed into the email platform. This font that we're using is called Garrett, but that is not a web-safe font. You can see that Klaviyo has a selection of your web-safe fonts. So we're going to choose one that's going to be very similar. And I'm actually going to be sticking with Helvetica as our body text. From here, we can also change the size of that text. I'm going to keep that at 14. If we were using headings, you can also then do the same for your headings, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, changing all the sizes, changing the color. What I love about a styles tab is that it is universal to the design. So you don't have to individually go into every section and update it. It does it as a whole for every single part of native text. I also suggest that you fix everything for mobile as well, making sure that if you want to bring the text down or up, as well as we have line height here, which I suggest that you stick to around 1.5. And that is also for desktop as well. Now, I won't go into too much detail about that, but truly once you have one set up and ready to go, you then can just duplicate this template within your platform. So all the styles will always be there for you. Now let's build out this email. We're not actually going to have any heading bar here just because I'm not teaching that within this particular lesson. So we're just going to delete that out, as well as I'm just going to delete out the social icons, but I'll just leave the random footer in there, which is obviously important to have for any unsubscribes. It is a drag and drop editor, so we're just going to simply pull in an image block because that is the first thing that's going to start our email. You can either drag and drop or just select an image. I'm going to drag my image in. It's important that you also include alt text as well as the link address for where you want this image to be clicked through to. For the purposes of making this as quick as possible, I'm not going to do that for every single image, but that is really important to have. I'm also going to jump over to mobile and see how it looks, making sure that I'm always switching on the full width on mobile just in case it hasn't picked that up. Now we need to come into the next section, which is a native text area. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy what that color was behind the text in Canva. Jumping back over to Klaviyo, it is what's called a text block. So I'm going to pull in a text block underneath the image. I'm going to change the background color to the color that I just took from the Canva document. I'm going to double click in the text area and then just paste my text in. And you can see that it is not looking anything like our initial design. So we have a few things that we need to change. First, I'm going to also grab that text color. This would have been a perfect time, obviously, to put that into your styles tab, and you can have a look how this is going to work now. Change that body copy to brown. I'm going to bring up the text and I'm going to make it centered. It's still not exactly where we need it, and that's because I need to add in some padding on the left and the right. And I'm not going to do that by clicking in here and clicking enter and trying to make it look good. Because every email client is different, the size on which people are opening up on, you're never going to have full control over how many lines you actually have if you do it that way. It'll look very disjointed. So I'm going to use block padding, and I want to use the padding from left to right. So I'm going to use something like 60. I'm going to have a look at that, see if I like it, maybe make it a bit bigger. Now, if I go and have a look at this on mobile, you can see that that padding has also worked on mobile, and we don't want that. So I'm going to click that over, full width on mobile. Perfect. Now jumping back over to desktop. Now that is looking much more like what was happening with my design. If I still wanted to bring that in any further, I could, if I wanted it to match completely to what was happening in my Canva design. But it's also good to understand that it doesn't always need to match up 100%, but you can definitely try your best. I'm also going to bold this one part, which was also on my design. Now moving on to the next section, which was the CTA button. And this was also native as well. So we just need to find the button, pull it in underneath. We're going to simply change out the color. It was completely square, so we're going to get rid of any rounded corners. We're going to change the font to match the font of everything else, which is Helvetica. We're going to put in our link address and change out the text. We can either fit to text if that was your design, but if we want to add a little bit more padding on the side, if you choose fit to text and then just again using the padding function to make it work for you. Same thing, I'll jump over to mobile, make sure that it's all working for me. And the last step to this to make it all come together is to change that background color. So I'm going to grab the background color from the block above, scrolling down and finding that option and changing that. To finish off this section, we do need to add that breathing space, that white space below the CTA button. There's two options for this. We can either add some padding at the bottom of the CTA, so something around 40 padding here, or if I didn't want to use the padding there, I could simply use what's called a spacer at the bottom. I would have to change the background color to match as well, and then I could use that to add in some more white space. Whatever works for you. Now we're moving on to the image section, which is the features and benefits. This one is quite simple. We're going to be pulling in two images here. One image below that spacer. Once I've pulled in the first one, I'll add alt text, the link address. I'll make sure that it's full width on mobile as well. Jump over to mobile, make sure that I am happy with that. Then I can duplicate it and add in the second image at the bottom. Now we have our two images there. We can then move into the third section, which is the testimonial. Remember that this is a native text section with a background color. So we need to pull in a text block. It's naturally going to give us the brown color because that's how our styles tab is set up. From here, I'll paste that text in. Now we do have a heading here, which I'm going to show you how we're going to change this very soon. But first, I just want to set up the padding on the side. Once I'm happy with that on both desktop and mobile, keeping in mind on mobile, it's going to go from one side to the other, and desktop, it will have that padding. From here, I can then set the background color. And because this text is slightly different to what our normal text is, being that it is white, this is where I would go and change it directly within that section. I also want to add some padding from top to bottom to really flex it out. Check the mobile, make sure that I'm happy with that as well. And now let's fix the heading itself. So if it was set up, I could just highlight it and then choose, say, heading 3 or heading 2. For now, let's just say it was heading 3. If I quickly just jump over to the styles tab, choose my heading 3. Maybe I want to bring that size down. I want to keep it centered. Check on mobile as well. So you can see that on mobile, it's far too big. Let's say I want to bring that down to about an 18. That looks a lot better. Now it's looking good on mobile as well as desktop. In the initial design, we actually had some padding on the side. So we can actually do this for both desktop and mobile, but it has to be done in a different section. And this is talking about Klaviyo specifically. Every email platform is slightly different, the way that they work this option with a colored background. But the way that Klaviyo works is that we have a section. So if I hover down below, you can see this is a new section. Now the section itself can have padding. So for this example, I'm going to show you with padding of 30. I can grab that text block and pull it down. Now you can see naturally I've already got padding on the side because that's what we've selected at a top level. If I go over to mobile, it's also going to give me the same thing. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to work with both one element with both mobile and desktop, and you need to play around with it to actually work. Once you've confirmed all of that, we're then going to move on to the bottom of the email. I'm going to leave this text area in its own section, and I'm also going to bring in another section for our images as well as our footer copy. The bottom of our email has the 3 images. So simply I'm just going to pull in an image block to the bottom of the email, pull in the second image, and pulling in the third image. Once it's all in, you've added your alt text, your link address, make sure that everything is full width. I can then go and add padding where I need it, because you can see that we do need some padding at the top and the bottom of this section so that we can get a breathability at the top of these images here. We can either do it directly on the image itself, or obviously we can add in that spacer. Because it's a new section, I'm going to give it a space of 40. I'm also going to click the image above, and I'm going to add some padding below this image as well, about 20, to see if I can even out the gaps. Maybe I'll change it to 10. That looks a little bit more even for me. Because we have exported these images with the gaps that we actually needed by bringing those rectangles down, they look absolutely fine. The last thing that we need to do is bring in that final CTA button. Now, what I suggest, if you already have a CTA button that is set up and ready to go, that we're just going to duplicate that and pull it down to the bottom of the email. Remove the background color, change out the copy. We're going to add some padding at the bottom of the last image here, just to give it some breathing space, as well as the bottom of the CTA button. We do want to get it quite far away from the footer. When it's all very close, it can look very cluttered, just as I discussed with all of the white space. From here, I then just want to go over to the mobile and check that everything is in place on the mobile as well. And this is the time where you're going to go through every section, make sure that the sizing is right for both desktop and mobile. I think that the button text is a bit big just in general. I also want to bring the height of that down to maybe about a 13. So I'm also going to do it on the second one here too, bringing that all down. If I wanted to change any of the text sizes, I would do that in the styles tab. 14 is honestly the lowest that your copy should be. I wouldn't go any smaller than size 14. This text here does look like it's a lot going from one side to another. Now, obviously we can't use the padding here because we've got it full width on mobile. So if we change that, it's going to look something like this. In this instance would be a great time to duplicate and show directly one on desktop and one on mobile. So I'll show you how to do this. We duplicate, we're going to go to a display and we're going to say desktop only. So now that one's disappeared. This one here, we're going to display and make it mobile only. Now we actually going to take this off. Then we can start playing with the padding that is directly for mobile only. Now mobile has its own text block and desktop has its own text block as well. I also want to add a little bit of space between the text block as well as the CTA. Because we have two different text blocks now, I'm going to do that on the actual CTA button because that is on both desktop and mobile. Once I've finished all my edits, I've added all my alt text, all of my links behind every single image and every CTA button. I'm then going to preview and test the email in my own inbox, having a look at it on desktop as well as mobile, clicking on every single area and making sure that there's no mistakes, it's all clickable, and now you're ready to send your email.